Hey, Nerdpreneurs! Frank here. Just a note that if you're hearing this, it means you are not an official subscriber and will only be hearing the first part of this conversation. In order to access full episodes of the Nerdpreneur Show, you'll need to join our
awesome Nerdpreneur board
by going to patreon.com/nerdpreneur. There you'll find our private RSS feed to add to your favorite podcatcher, along with other board member-only content. We don't run ads on our show, so all of this is only made possible through the support of our board members. So if you enjoy what Chris and I are doing here, please consider becoming a member. We would love it if you joined. Now, here's today's Talkin' Nerdy.
Talking nerdy. We're just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna talk nerdy?
Frank, what are we doing here today? This is a Talking Nerdy, right?
Yeah, this is a Talking Nerdy, and we have a very special guest today, Rory from Only Crits. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm very excited to be here.
We have not got enough dice yet, man. We are just getting started. I do. Yeah, you were like our number 4 episode that we did ever, which is crazy that we've now got over, I think we've done another 15 interviews or more, and we got more in the bank, almost 20 so far. And we also have like a bunch of these things called Talking Nerdies, which is what you're on right now, where Frank and I are usually the ones just chatting back and forth about various subjects. But you reached out to ask if you can come on, and we were excited to be able to bring you back on and chat through something. And I guess you guys have been doing just some crazy stuff since then. You've grown your Insta, you've grown your page. You guys are like moving the needle in a lot of different ways, and we thought it might be kind of cool to do this like check-in back with Only Crits. You've also moved, right? Like your whole background is different now.
Yeah, I personally have moved. The company hasn't moved at all. I mean, we don't have an office, so it's always been remote work. But yeah,
Isn't that the coolest?
Yeah, no, it's truly a dream come true.
2023, everybody's remote. So
where did you move? We were just about to get into it.
Yeah, sorry, London, England.
Whoa, that's like way further away.
Big move.
Wow. So is the food there great, or is it?
It is. I have the hot take that British food gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, it tastes good. It's exactly what you're looking for after a night of pints.
Well, we kind of decided that the topic for today was not only going to be something that you wanted to talk with us about.
You have something upcoming.
Yeah, you have something upcoming.
I can't even tell you what it is yet. It'll be at the end, but
it'll be at the end. All I'm going to tease it is that there is an upcoming Kickstarter that you guys are releasing, and we're going to get into the details on that Kickstarter in a little bit. But first, we kind of wanted to dive into your process for creating short form content, because Only Crits has done an amazing job. It was shortly after I think we spoke with you. You really ramped up your short form content game. Like, it was nuts. You were releasing almost every single day, and it was all very much well tied into your brand and to your audience. And Chris and I both have several questions about your process, what you've learned, what works, the different platforms you're on, and in general, what takes up time and what you enjoy about it. So we're going to get into that. Yeah. But first, maybe you can provide a little bit of an overview of the platforms and the kind of content to give some context to people that maybe don't see your content.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to. And it is funny because I think it was like the day after we set up our TikTok account that we had our first interview with you guys. And so when we were doing our plugs at the end, we did the Facebook, Instagram, and then I was like, oh yeah, and the TikTok. We now have a TikTok you can go see. And it worked. Here we are, 2 years later now, which is quite exciting.
Yeah.
But yes, we ramped up our short form video content primarily.
Before we get into that, like, can you give a context just for where you're at right now? Because that's really great standard. Like, you literally started in that first interview your TikTok account at 0, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where is it now? And where's your Instagram now? Like, let's give them some stats and let them know how much.
Sure. I mean, I can pull them up, almost exactly.
Mhm.
Um, obviously, it's within like hundreds at this point. So TikTok within 2 years went from 0 to 27.7 thousand followers,
Wow,
which is,
Ooh, that's
I'm very
huge,
proud
pretty
of.
bro.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is quite big.
27,000
It's
people
obviously,
looking at dice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's obviously weird because there's constantly, especially online, there's just constantly streams of people with millions of followers, tons of followers, blah blah blah. Um, but 28,000 is no small number, so
Mm-mm.
quite proud of that, honestly.
Well, I don't know too many dice companies that have that level of
Mm,
followers, by the way. Like, there aren't really, I mean, yeah, okay, there's some TikTok influencers who are out there doing like dance videos or they're very attractive or where, not that you're not attractive, but there are some very attractive people doing things on these platforms that have millions for sure. But none of them are just out there like, I'm a dice company. And
yeah,
to have
that's
30,
true.
almost 30,000 people following you on TikTok. And what about on your Instagram? Because you guys grew massively there too.
Yes, Instagram's now at 17,000. Not totally sure what it was because we had built our Instagram quite a bit. The
It
first
was under 10K, 100%
yearish,
under
yeah, I want to
10K.
say it was like 8,000. So I think we've roughly doubled.
Hmm.
It's harder to grow on Instagram, I have found. TikTok, it's a bit more like wildfire, the way you can gain subscribers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been able to grow those two platforms. Are there other platforms that you have also grown, or are those the main two?
I mean, we have like our Facebook, which I don't think has really grown with the introduction of short form video, and we started posting the videos on YouTube as well, just as YouTube Shorts, because
Hmm.
that's, they want to get their chunk of the market, and that the videos themselves do fine. It's just a lot harder to convert to followers. So I think we have like 100 followers, which again,
Hmm.
for a kid growing up, you're like, oh, I have 100 followers. That's so exciting. So I don't want to make light of being able to get 100 followers.
Hmm.
But obviously a lot smaller than Instagram and TikTok, which are our two biggest platforms.
Cool.
Yeah, YouTube is a totally different beast. I would say if I had to rank them as far as difficulty of gaining followers, I'd probably put YouTube towards the top of difficulty. Facebook is also seems kind of hard because partly I don't feel like we ever put that much effort towards Facebook anymore.
Yeah,
And then Instagram and then TikTok being maybe the easiest. Twitter, I don't know. Twitter hasn't really been capitalizing on the short form video. They've been too busy with
yeah,
Musk.
yeah,
I don't know how people grow on Twitter. I don't understand at all how, like,
It's
if you're not
getting harder too.
already famous or you already
mm,
have people somewhere else, or you just say crazy shit. Like, I feel like
yeah,
you have to say really crazy, divisive stuff to get people to like and engage with your content on Twitter, and then it winds up spreading, or you get someone else who's really famous to tweet out your crazy stuff, and then all of a sudden you're able to go viral, or somebody, it's kind of a piggyback nature to it. Um, how does that? So what was your strategy like when you started doing this commitment to content, this short form content? Like, what was the actual strategy, and how did you think through it at the very beginning stages?
So first thing was let's highlight dice because that's what we do. That's what we're trying to sell. So that was video number one, rolling dice. Not very exciting.
Mhm.
Obviously didn't perform great because it was just me rolling dice and yeah. Um and peppered in. So yeah, it's basically where it started was let's use short form video platforms to highlight dice rolling because we can do that. There's really no downside. We haven't started yet. We might as well just get on the platform first, upload some videos, see how it goes. Um, and the funny thing about the videos was, well, A, the dice ones weren't doing great, and then B, you see this trend of company social medias not shilling themselves in the modern era, working really well.
What do you mean
Uh,
by that? Not shilling?
yeah, basically, like instead of hopping on social media and even if they're not paying for ads, they're still advertising themselves.
Ah,
They've sort of stopped doing that. Like a regular post from a random company is probably not geared as direct marketing anymore. It's more like here's a funny thing and our company name is next to it. And that's the classic. It started with Wendy's roasting McDonald's, and then that
Mm.
got way more engagement than posting a Wendy's ad. So then they kept doing it, and then other companies started roasting each other. And then instead of roasting each other, because that's negative, everyone's just making jokes about random stuff. And then all the companies are just having fun. And that general idea of like we're very small, two guys, right? But we're still a company. But that same sense of instead of coming at this with let's just show off our product, let's come at it with the idea that like, well, let's just have fun on social media and post the kind of videos that we would like to see as members of the D&D community. And then just because we're a business, that's fine. That doesn't mean we have to be constantly advertising ourselves. And once people enjoy our videos, then we can tell them that we have dice. Um, So that was the general, very broad strokes principle of moving from showcasing our dice to making videos along the same lines as what you watch as a D&D player.
So
Um,
as far as the dice videos, how long were you doing those until you realized, we need to switch this up? This isn't there's no traction here.
it was short. I mean, I don't actually know how long it would take me to go back and see the first beginning couple videos. I want to say it was only 1 to 3 videos that really
Mm,
just were kind of just didn't nothing happened, and so it was like we can keep making dice videos, but it's clear that there's not a great uptick, so there's not really a downside to posting other stuff. And if that gets an uptick, great, because at the front of the page there's still dice videos, we still have our links in the description. So it was pretty quick. And like credit to Eric, he was just like, do whatever you want on the socials accounts, because you know it's hard unless you're doing something really wrong. There's not really a downside to making posts. Um,
right.
Do you
and
enjoy
yeah.
it? Is that
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
why you took on the role there? Because there's your partnership, and so I've never seen Eric on any of the videos.
Mhm.
Actually, it's always been you. Is that just because you have an aptitude for you like it? Like, how did that come to be that you're the guy?
It was a large part because uh, I like it for sure, and also I just had a little more time than Eric. Especially in the early days, Eric was pushing the marketing really hard. Like he was really trying to find us some toeholds, and I mean he was doing a great job. Is still doing a great job of that. And it just meant it was a little easier for me to work into my schedule to create some content. Plus, like I was the one writing the adventures, which is a little more creative side.
Hmm.
You know, a little more easy to roll creative adventure type stuff into video content. So yeah, it ended up being one of those things where it's like, okay, can you do that? And I was like, yeah, of course, happy to. And then it started working, and so I kept doing it, and then we just stuck with that.
When did you find out, or what do you remember the video where you said, "Oh wow, this is what works"?
It was a video, it was a TikTok, because in the beginning I was posting on TikTok and not on Instagram, which we've rectified now because there's no, again, same deal where there's no issue with posting on both. So it was a TikTok, um, making a joke about every like the first time someone plays D&D, their first character is always Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
And and again, because it's TikTok and uh, everyone talks about the algorithm, as do I. But I think they just if you're a new enough account and you're posting something that gets a little bit of engagement, they'll push it to see if you're like a creator that's worth pushing.
Hmm.
And so it got caught up and pushed enough, and people liked it. So that was like one of our first 5 videos was me making a joke about everyone wanting to be Aragorn, and it did like 500,000 views or something, way way bigger than I was expecting. And
Whoa.
that was kind of the moment where it was like, okay, we're gonna get a lot more eyes on the Only Crits logo on the side of the screen if we do, stuff that people can laugh at or stuff that people want to try in their games than if we're showing dice every video.
So you post pretty much every day. Is that your posting pattern? Do you have a set schedule, or like how do you think through that?
It's not set. I aim for 5 days a week. Um, yeah, and that's just it's kind of a goal post I set for myself. But yeah, 5 days a week is the general principle.
Is there any data behind that reasoning?
Not really, especially because I've struggled with the data from like social media sources, everyone claims that they have the algorithm nailed down to this posting time or that. And I've struggled with seeing that reflected directly in my posting because at the end of the day, if I'm pushing videos that I don't think are good, like pushing to get them out based on a schedule, if they're not good, then it doesn't matter if I'm perfectly posted, if I have all the right hashtags, and at the end of the day, it still has to be engaging. Um, but the general principle also that I am pretty sure applies is that the more you post, the better, because the platform enjoys having you post a lot on it.
Hmm.
So I try to post 5 days a week because that seems like tons, and I know it's achievable. Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, it also sounds like one of those milestones or those goals that a company might set to just, aim to keep you on a set trajectory.
yeah,
And you're setting up in, 5 days a week is a work week too. I mean, it's kind of a regular work
yeah.
week. You're showing up in people's feeds. Is there specific days that you think about, like, okay, these are the higher engagement days, like I have to post Mondays or I have to be on Saturdays, or is it just sort of like when I can get it done and make sure it's up there? How does that work?
I try to post more to times than days, again because I'm posting essentially every weekday is the general principle.
Hmm.
Because then I can treat it like a job and film to a certain amount and then post to a certain amount. If I know I'm going up 5 days a week, then I can aim for times instead of days. But even those are loose enough. So, and again, it's the same sort of thing where I wasn't experiencing that kind of because I'm pretty sure people say it's like Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays perform really well. So you should be posting on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Then those days change as the ever elusive algorithm changes, and there's no guarantee that a video posted on Friday is going to do worse than a video posted on Monday because if they're different videos, they're different videos. So, and I also it's kind of one of those things where I started like scapegoating it, where the videos were performing well, they stopped performing super well, and then I got into the like, oh no, it's the fault of the day. I got to post on a different day, and I got too wrapped up in the whole posting at the wrong time, different day, different wording. I should swear, I shouldn't swear. The caption has to be right. The caption's too long. The caption's too short, and then you kind of get away from the spirit of having fun with it,
Hmm.
and people can tell. If you're having fun, it's pretty obvious.
You're
Right.
also in a different time zone now. I mean, because you
Hmm.
used to be on the West Coast in North
Hmm.
America. Now you said you're over in London.
Yeah.
And how does that I'm wondering specifically what market, geographically you time this for, if at all?
I still try to time it so that most of North America is awake when I post, which tends to be about mid-afternoon British time because our audience still tends to be almost entirely from the United States. So there's not really a point in posting if it's 2 a.m. there. So plus if I post mid-afternoon here, that's still generally the time you want to be posting. It's not so way off base that I wouldn't hit anyone in my time zone. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it
You have to
doesn't alter it
outsource
that
people.
much. Yeah, yeah,
Kinda convenient, actually. I find that if I'm making content, it's hard for me to get that done first thing in the morning and then get
yeah,
it out early enough for the standard I have, which is between 8 and 10 AM.
mm,
Like, that's tricky, and I'm not making nearly as much content as you, so I'm not doing a whole lot of batch work on it. And speaking of, do you typically do these in batches?
yeah,
I mean, we're gonna get more into the process of everything, but I'm just curious in general, do you do batches?
yeah, pretty much always now. I partially because it's easier to time if I have videos ready to go, and I, for whatever reason, either don't think of something that I like or don't have the opportunity to film it on a day, and I have one in the bank that I can post. And also I've found it's easier to think of ideas when you're in the process of filming stuff. Like if you're trying to just sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna think of one video Then you think of it and you're like, great, I'll just film that, and then you film that and you pack it all up. Is I have arrived with less decent content than when I sort of spend a morning being like, "Okay, well, I'm thinking of videos this morning." Then I sit down and I film them, and while I'm filming, I'm still thinking of other ideas on the off chance that something better comes up, and it's like, "Oh, why didn't I think of it like that?" Or, I'm already making this joke about this rule. Why don't I apply it to this rule because it fits better? Um, so I found that the more I make content, the better the content gets, which is another reason why I tend to batch film. It's
Yeah.
not
I'm
always true, but
So does that mean that you have sort of, because I've heard people talk about just get a content day where it's like, all right, every Thursday it's my day to just make content and I spend the day doing that and I make 5 or 10 or whatever pieces of content that I can drip out over the week. Is that your strategy and that's what you mean by batching?
essentially, it's a little less like I'm a little less structured than that. It's normally between Monday and Wednesday. I have to film 5 videos. Um, so like if on Monday I can only think of one video, I'll only film one. And then if
Mhm.
on Tuesday I have 5 video ideas, I'll just film all 5. Um, but yeah, that's the same general principle is like I'm doing content now, and I'll
Mhm.
sit down and do the content.
And so does that mean that like you're a week ahead in your content? Like you've got your 5 for the next week, or is it like kind of a churn and burn, like, man, I got to get these done so that I can release it this week?
It's still pretty churn and burn,
Hmm.
and yeah, mostly just because I'm not I'm not on top of it enough to get weeks and weeks out.
Well, I feel like that's sort of the challenge of being a content creator because as much as it in our minds when we say, "Oh, I'm going to be a content," I'll get a week ahead, I'll get
Mm,
2 weeks ahead, and I'll have all this content, and then I'll have no stress, no stress. I'll be able to like
yeah.
miss a day, I'll do this, whatever, and it'll be fine, it'll be fine. But then when you actually get into creating content, it is this like, oh shit, I need to get something out yesterday.
Yeah.
I better get rushing on this thing and coming up with ideas and figuring it out. And it is like I don't know. When I even when I was doing my meme account for a while, it was always like, oh man, I got to come up with like 5, 10 memes, and then like you pick the
Mm,
best one for the next day or whatever. And it was just, you know, you get into that habit of creating daily, creating daily, creating daily, and then eventually it becomes like I don't know. I found it got easier once you got into that habit of just kind of creating it daily to post, creating it daily to post. Um, did it ever get easier, or is it easier? Like how did that get to? How does it feel now versus when it started?
it's definitely gotten easier. I'd agree with you 100%. Just that the habit of it, and I think part of me started treating it a little bit more like part of my job instead of this elusive sort of view chasing. Because in the beginning, again, like one of our early videos got so big that I was like, "Oh my god, are we about to blow up? Is this gonna be a huge account?" And then there's that stress of like, I want every video to be
Half a
super
million.
good, and so then yeah, exactly. And then you self edit and you don't post stuff because you're doubting yourself. And instead of doing that, it's just like, no, I'm gonna film a bunch of content. I'm gonna have fun with it, and we're gonna post it. And that got easier the more I did it, the more routine it got. Like you said, like posting again, like not quite daily for me in terms of I don't film every day, but like filming regularly and trying to think of ideas regularly definitely made it way easier.
As far as thinking of those ideas, we were talking a moment ago about inspiration, and I wanted to come back to that because you were saying that the inspiration tends to come to you when you're in the middle of filming, and I'm also wondering, A, how easy is it for you to get inspired? Because that varies very much person to person. And then B, does the inspiration ever come to you in other ways? Like, do you seek it out?
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean seek it out?
Yeah, so we had someone on our show a little while ago, Hope. She's a watercolor painter, and she talked a lot about surrounding herself with points of inspiration. And,
Mm,
things that inspire. She's like, I've got this little dragon mug that I made many years ago, or I've got this crystal ball that's like totally pointless, but it looks nice and I like it. And I always have to make sure my desk is facing out a window to look at trees. I always have to look at trees.
Or she'll go out to the woods and like find a stream and then be like, "Oh, what would live around here?" And
Or a
like
stray horse.
yeah,
Like
exactly. I mean, the joys of living in the wilderness,
Montana or wherever
Montana,
she
right?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh
The
yeah.
Midwest for sure. But yeah, like, how do you keep essentially how do you keep coming up with these ideas? That's
Yes.
that's what people I think struggle with is like you get burned out.
Oh,
So,
totally. And like again, I felt that because when we started out, funny videos, the videos I was making, I think were a little more relatable because it was talking about again. Maybe I haven't stated this for people who haven't happened across my content, but we're a D&D company, so all of my videos are Dungeons and Dragons related. In general, they're pretty comedic. I aim for comedy about a third of the time, and then an, another third I'll aim for suggestions for monsters or stat blocks or NPCs or something, and then another third of the time will be more character related stuff that is sometimes funny and sometimes just suggestions, and sometimes it's neither and it's somewhere in between. Anyways, so that's generally what I do. But in the beginning, it was more comedy because that's where the initial success came from. And so I struggled with inspiration because, well, also I don't really consider myself that funny. Like, you have funny friends, and it's like, you're a funny guy, and I was never that guy. And so it's not like this wellspring of jokes are popping through my head. So it is a lot of drawing from surroundings, and I mean, for my content, again, Dungeons and Dragons related. I'm partially shamed and partially proud to admit that a lot of it just comes from the people I play with and the table and the game that we're playing.
mhm.
And funny stuff happens when you're playing, and if you can frame it right, there's a lot of D&D you need context for it to be entertaining. But if you can frame it right, you don't really need that context because it's a little ridiculous and that's fun. So a lot of it just comes from that. I mean, I've actually struggled with that a little bit recently because I'm still trying to get a consistent D&D group together here. Um, But so that's one source of inspiration specifically for me is playing the game that the account is based on. Part of it is because I'm writing a lot again for the job D&G Adventures and now this D&D other project that we'll talk about, the source book, um, is rules because the D&D rule set is it's specific or it tries to be it is specific, but it also is trying really hard to be specific and inevitably leaves out stuff or stuff can be interpreted weird. And this is the same sort of space a lot of D&D content creators kind of come at is either how to build really cool player characters based on the base rules or why this rule is silly or that rule is must always be implemented. And it's that same sort of space that I'll like make suggestions for like rule suggestions or player character suggestions. Um, which is a little bit of a nebulous. I realize as inspiration, it's hard to say like I'm inspired by the D&D rules because that's not totally true, but it's not false because it's just something you're looking at every day, right? You see the specifics of it.
I want to jump in for a sec because there's a couple things that I hear that are, to someone listening to this that maybe isn't in the D&D space. Maybe
Mhm.
they're looking for advice on how to create regular content for, I don't know, they're making shoes or something.
Yeah.
They have some sort of product and it's
Mhm.
totally unrelated. So, one of the things I hear in the first one is be involved with the activity or
Mhm.
the community that appreciates that activity. And so from that point, you will just stumble across ideas. And the second one is you're talking about rules and rules, even rules communities on Reddit and all. So in that case, it's kind of okay, maybe instead of talking with the end users, you talk with other creators, like other creators in that space or other people who make similar products. And going with that shoe example, it could be like other apparel creators, maybe not just shoe people. Um, cobblers. Would we still call them cobblers?
I think so.
I just like the name cobbler.
I know it's not. I just makes
Peaches
me
and
hungry.
people. Those are the two of my favorite cobblers. Um, I I think what you're asking is like, for when you're creating this content, you have to have some level of engagement with the community, right? In order to kind of understand the community's tropes and
Yeah.
things about it. Like when I was making D&D memes, I went into the community on Instagram. Let's just say that was because that was the biggest community for it at the time, and I would go and look at all the other D&D memes that were successful, and I realized like, oh, this is what the community kind of finds funny. Like there are tropes. Like for some reason, people like to shit on rangers, which is a class.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is exactly, but that I learned that was a trope, that if you can shit on rangers, people will laugh about that in some capacity. And if you can find a new way to do that, people will actually share that or laugh about it. Same thing with like, oh my gosh, this is a bard who seduces everybody
Yeah.
and seduces weird monsters. Like that's a trope in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So how can you take that and use that in your style of content? And so there are these like tropes in every kind of community that are out there. How much of your time is, I guess, now, or even coming up with this, how much of your time maybe was figuring out those tropes and then like reinterpreting them into your style? So, maybe we want to talk about trends even, like, because, there's trends and audios and things like that are moving, because
Mhm.
I think some people think you have to come up with everything, and memes are not necessarily all created out of nothing. They're often created out of what's already existing within a community.
That's a great
Yeah.
point. Finding those trends. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And it's like doing market research where I don't actually I don't know the amount of time I spent on it, and a big part of that is because it's also a hobby. It's the beauty of the job. It's why I'm so happy being able to do this. Because yeah, like I'm browsing D&D memes all the time and being able to riff off of a common joke, like just exactly like what you were saying. You can I had a creative writing teacher at one point say you could rewrite any book and it wouldn't be plagiarism if you were doing it from memory because you'd be writing it in your own style in implicitly. Now obviously that's an extremely like slippery slope. You can't be stealing other people's content. But if there's, a stereotypical joke, like the seduction bard, for instance, like you were saying, um, and so finding that in your own community, I think, yeah, is vital. And I don't know a way to do it beyond just genuinely sort of taking part and 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 I think that's part of the reason why the more niche your content can be, the more specific an audience you're targeting, um, the better it'll do. Because if you're a fan of a show, for instance, if you're trying to grow your audience based on like the show New Girl,
Mhm.
like you're not gonna do anything other than talk about the characters from New Girl and the plot lines from New Girl, and maybe dress up like characters and do voices like the characters, and that's not really creating anything brand new, but it's all still new because you're the one doing it, and like you're doing it from a place of excitement. And I don't know, it's just fun to see people be excited about the stuff that you're excited about, and that's all it really boils down to. So I mean, it's hard, I want to give a very solid answer like, yeah, go out and spend this number of hours and talk to this number of people, and I don't know, it's just like you kind of at some point for some amount of time you kind of have to just be part of the community that you're targeting.
Well, and isn't that so much like what Nerdpreneur is about? Is that if you have to be going somewhere where you care about it, right? Like you can't fake it, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, right? Like, can you imagine people who are stepping into the D&D community and like they start making jokes, but they don't really get the tropes, they don't
Yeah.
really understand the mechanics of the game, and so their jokes don't land, and people don't understand like what they're trying to hint at. They are just like, oh, this is funny. Like I've definitely put out memes before where when I was just getting into the community and figuring out what was what were the tropes were my interpretation of what was funny was like nobody else got it because
Yeah.
I was and it was my fault. My fault was that I didn't really understand the community or what was actually happening in this. But once you get into it and you really are following your passion, and like you said, playing the game,
Mm.
actually engaging with it, all these things sort of do come out organically. I had a ton of memes that I did around the games that we were doing, or the characters that I was creating, or my friends were creating, that showed up into my content. And
Mm.
it is authentic and funny, and a new interpretation on something that everybody kind of
And
recognizes.
establishing a framework kind of helps. And of course, for me, Dungeons and Dragons is the framework, and it has a lot of frameworks. Like when you're talking, a lot of my videos are based around classes, which is a D&D mechanic, and it's very established and very. If you play D&D, you know what the the tropes are. Even if you're not at all involved with looking at D&D memes, the way that the classes are set up means you have an idea of what the class is like, and so making a joke about that class is very straightforward.
Hmm.
Um, and I think finding a framework, because a lot of people want to create content that isn't for one community, but I think you can still, in any given video, establish a framework of people or a topic that you're trying to talk about or trying to um, relate to, and doing that beforehand and figuring out what it is you're trying to say uh, is a good first step.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to if, like we've been saying, if you're taking part. And it reminds me of back I did a YouTube channel called Random Rolls at one point, and it was all about campaign that was with a few players, and we recorded it and put it up. But it was um the idea was everything happened based on the roll of dice. But the one of the good points of wisdom I once was told was, since I'm creating this content, I need to make sure that I am consuming this content first, from elsewhere, because not only are you going to get those ideas like we're talking about, but there kind of is, in my mind, there is an order of operations to this kind of stuff, which is you consume this content, then you contribute and participate in this community, and then you create and give back.
Mm.
And I feel like that's what we're talking about here. And that's something that you have done for a while. And even when we spoke with you and Eric in the beginning, that wasn't the beginning. When we spoke to you guys in our beginning, that was kind of a thing that I heard, that in so creating dice and these adventures, you guys were both, you know, consuming the content, participating, and then creating and giving back to the community. And it sounds like that is ultimately what you're doing in this situation as well.
I appreciate hearing that. That is definitely the goal. Yeah. So it's nice to hear you say that because yeah, I mean that's it. That's what we're trying to do. Um, and we were D&D players first, and I think regardless of what happens to Only Crits, we'll probably both always be D&D players. And I think if I could add to that, um, because that's the first step, is to consume what what it is you want to do, videos that you want to make, consume videos like that. Um, but I don't think you should ever limit yourself to just that, because I've realized now, another point of inspiration for me is and I mean this is going to apply when we go on to talk about the source book. A huge point of inspiration is being able to draw from unexpected interests and unexpected sources, that if you bury yourself in one topic forever, you won't. It's like you won't be able to see the forest for the trees type deal. You're going to be so lost in the specifics that it's hard to get fresh takes. So I'd say for sure, always consume the stuff that you want to create. Be an active member of the community, just like you said, 100%. And then also, like, I don't know, like, get out and look at wild horses and do other stuff. Just do whatever.
Yeah.
Say yes to something every now and then that you otherwise wouldn't. Um, because yeah, that has helped a lot for me to be able to combine D&D with random stuff like detective novels. Oh, well, why am I not making videos about detective D&D characters?
Mhm.
Just random stuff like that.
Well, it's nice when you have the flexibility of a platform like D&D where
Yeah.
the essence of creativity is rewarded and you can really do almost anything you want, draw from life and bring it into D&D. That was often a source of inspiration for any sort of memes or jokes that I might be able to find was like, well, what if you played D&D in this way, right? Or
Mhm.
with these types of characters. I'd be one thing I did hear before from other big marketers that I have had a chance to talk to that maybe have created content or memes is you get ideas from your community too. So, for example, they might tweet out something like, you're a blank when. And then you get a lot of feedback from people around, like, oh, you're like if we were going to do this for Nerdpreneur, you're a Nerdpreneur when, and it could be anything from like you wake up thinking about dice in the middle of the night, you know what I mean? Like, or you're
Yeah.
having a nightmare about dice sales or something, right? Like it could be any number of these types of things that happen. But your community, if it starts to engage with that, gives you ideas that you could actually turn into memes or content. I'm curious if you have other things that you've used to create ideas or draw from the community to create your own content.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently we set up a Discord again for the source book because we sort of have an open call to play test it, but people chat about all kind of stuff in Discord, and it's been a great source of excitement because when people get excited about stuff, you want to share that excitement. So, um, just suggestions flying around and the ability to draw from, and again, I'm talking in a very specific, like if you're trying to start out and you're trying to make short form videos and you make a Discord server, it's gonna be very hard to get people in the Discord server. So obviously it's a specific example, but that's been great for me recently, having that place to go. Um, but I mean, speaking of Discord, like any server where you're chatting with friends about a topic is going to be a great place to see how people talk about stuff and
Yeah, there's
draw
no
from that.
shortage of active discords in various
Yeah.
communities that you could join for free and learn
Mm,
what's going on kind of in these highly engaged markets, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, even I want to add to that that Reddit has been I talk with someone I didn't know because I don't spend a whole lot of time on Reddit. So someone was telling me how they are on Reddit all the time, but they never participate. They
Oh
just
yeah.
they just, you know,
Scroll.
read and scroll and apparently the term is lurker
Oh yeah.
for Reddit, and I was like, "That's interesting." And then I later on said it back to them, like, "Oh yeah, you're a lurker," and I felt like it was a derogatory term when I said it, and so I was like, "Okay, it's a thing only someone can say about themselves." Like, got it. That felt.
I was about to call you a lurker,
Yeah, I stumbled right into. Well,
but
see, then you
I
would
stopped
feel it.
myself. Yeah,
You
I was
would
like,
feel it exactly. But
uh,
yeah, partaking in those ways as well in a community, even if you are just lurking about,
Mm,
you'll definitely get those ideas. Like same with Discord.
mhm. Yeah, 100%.
I, I wanted. Sorry, do you have more stuff on ideas and content?
I wanted to take things in the direction of process, a little more nitty gritty on process.
So did I.
Does that work for you? Great. Okay. Yeah. I think it would be nice for us to we've talked a bit about the inspiration, which is kind of pre-production in my
Mhm.
mind. So these are I don't know if these are terms you use, but is given that I make video for my day job, it's very much like, okay, we got pre-production, production, and then post-production.
Yeah.
So using that kind of framework in pre-production, there's usually the concepts. What is it? Conceptualization. There we go. That's the big word. Then there's like some sort of script writing. And then there's the kind of like planning the shoot. And then you launch into production. So let's talk about those three for a second. We've talked about the conceptualization.
Mhm.
Now I want to know if you do anything with scripts. And then I want to know about like the kind of setup that you might do.
Definitely. Scripts, I have in the past written out ideas. They tend to be to remind myself of what I was thinking of at the time because I don't you can I can tell for myself, editing my footage when I'm reading something off to the side and I don't like it. So I don't read from a script, which means I've sort of ended up phasing out writing down exactly what I'm going to say in general. Does cause issues in editing because there are long stretches of me looking down and, rubbing my nose and trying to think of the best way to phrase something, speaking to the camera and getting it wrong, thinking again, and then trying it again. Um, so realistically, I should be writing scripts, but currently I am not. Um, and I mean, not having a script means that you can self-edit really fast and not have to worry about it because there's nothing. As soon as you put something on a page, it's like, okay, this is what I'm saying. Uh, and at least for me, when I write stuff down, it sort of sets it a little bit too much in my mind. I have that issue with my writing as well. Like once I've written, I'm like, oh no, this sounds good. I shouldn't change it, but I should.
Mhm.
Anyways, so being able to self-edit like that for me is kind of nice because I can switch things up quickly. So I don't write scripts. Sorry, that was a very long way to say. Currently, I'm not writing scripts. Um, and then, sorry, what was step 3?
Well,
Yeah, it's like the setting up for production.
like,
So
how
for
is
Yeah,
your setup when you're doing these
right.
things? Like, do you have a camera on and a hand, or are you using a tripod? And like, what are you setting it up just with your camera sideways, Instagram? Like, how does
I
that
mean,
all even look?
all of the above has been used. I started by propping it up against my D&D books. I had a window ledge in front of me when we first got started with the short form, so I just prop it up, try to get the angle right. Um, I bought a tripod and a ring light for $15 off Amazon, which are mostly broken and still kicking around, and I still use them. Um, they're not really necessary other than if I don't have a ledge at the right angle, it's just easier to use a tripod. And the ring light was a fun little like, hey, I can always give myself good lighting. That's neat. Um, but and then like shots. So if I'm doing more than one character in a video, so if I have two people talking to each other, then I will generally set up for like where character 1 sits or stands and where character 2 sits or stands. Sometimes I'm lazy and I'll just mirror one seat in editing. So you take your shot, you say all of the lines from one spot, you slice it up, and then you just click mirror,
Hmm.
um,
You flip
so
it.
that it looks like they're on opposite sides of the camera. Um, but that also always makes me feel lazy when I do that. So I
And this is
try to
all
do
with your
multiple.
phone, right?
Yes, everything I shoot is with my phone. It's
And
easier to post. I haven't really been limited by it. So, and I'm also just
iPhone, or is it like a Samsung? Or like,
I use
are you
iPhone.
in the wall? All right, so you're in the walled garden. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
What?
there's a
What?
couple things. There's a couple things you've said to that, first off, script versus improvised. And I think you touched on a nice little nugget there, which is script is great if you have a specific joke or a specific, bit of wisdom that you want to share. I think scripts are great, but as if you're really inspired and really feeling the vibe in the moment, then going with improvisation, I find also tends to be better.
Well, sometimes you get a script and then you try doing it, and then you're like, "This isn't working,"
Yeah.
because what works on page does not necessarily work on camera or when someone's speaking. At least that's what I have found when I'm creating a content, and it's or just doing things in general. Sometimes if you try to make it too controlled and too
yeah,
structured, it just doesn't feel real or authentic. And so it's super important. Like, I think about it like music, right? Like if the person was reading off of their page when singing it versus memorize the lines and then just sort of feeling it, it's going to be a very different experience for the audience.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
What app are you using for when you actually record? Are you just using the phone app, like the phone's video app, or do you have a specific app that you use to record into?
I use the phone video app. I used to, because again, we started the short form on TikTok, so I was doing everything through TikTok. They have a very comprehensive editing suite. It's nice and easy to figure out
Mhm.
as a beginner. Um, but then we were going to post to different platforms. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot the video with the camera and then third party app to edit. And then I went through 2 or 3 different editing softwares. And I'm currently using CapCut to edit. So I shoot the video and then, yeah, CapCut is like very popular. It makes sense. It's very easy. Um, and it's also nice because you can I hope CapCut isn't listening and this was on purpose, but you can just take out their little watermark at the end. You can just delete it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's very, very simple. And again, very comprehensive. So, but yeah, just phone camera. I mean, if I had an Android, I think I wouldn't struggle with doing the same thing with an Android. So
No,
I
I
don't.
use CapCut on my Android. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, nice.
CapCut was a game changer for making editing and everything happen because of the even just the caption function is so good
Yeah.
compared to most other apps, even TikTok's caption function and stuff. Like it just does such a great job of figuring out how to do it and making it so easy to edit and then add effects with captions. And I mean, captions are I've heard are really important for social and for any sort of scrolling, and it makes sense because you're scrolling. But do you have an opinion on captions and how that works?
I'm extremely pro caption for sure. For sure in that boat. I mean, part of that just comes from I often will scroll through stuff with my phone fully on silent just because you're in public or whatever. It's just not nice to have phone volume up.
Yeah,
And if I'm on TikTok, I can't watch a video without caption, so you don't get a view. So we don't want to be
Right.
those people. It's just easier
exactly.
to have captions, and then to put that even further is just it's more inclusive. Like if you can't hear, then how can you enjoy our stuff? And that's no fun. So
Right.
extremely pro caption.
Did you
Yeah.
figure out like a font that you said, okay, this is our font, we're going to use this consistently? And how did you make that decision? And did you also have like a style of like how our stuff comes up? Like, what is there a style guide essentially for what Only Crits does that you use?
There isn't. That's a good question. You're making me think I should probably write something down. There isn't really. I mean, we use the base font. The only caveat to that is that I need that drop shadow on the back of captions, because otherwise half the time
Hmm.
can't read it because of a light background
Mhm.
or whatever. But we didn't change the fonts or anything, so maybe we should
Yeah,
just
that
for a
drop
little more stylish.
shadow's a safe bet every time. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, yeah, it's great. I mean, CapCut's also really nice. I found because if folks are uploading anything to a computer because they just don't want to edit on their phone, I will say CapCut does have a good browser editor as
Oh,
well as a downloadable client, and
that's
it
very
works
good to
on
know.
Mac and PC. And today's episode was brought to you by CapCut. Hey, 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 nerdpreneurs! We talked with Rory for another 45 minutes about his process making successful short form video content. The conversation includes expanding on his production process, a breakdown of his editing and post-production procedures, how to overcome the fear of posting content, and effective posting strategies to grow your following on various platforms. To get access to the full conversation, go to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and join the
Awesome Nerdpreneur Board.
to start getting full episodes of the Nerdpreneur Show along with other board member only content. Now, back to the show. But let's I think we covered that really nicely. So thank you, Rory, for walking us through your
Oh, my pleasure.
process, how you do it, the success and the lessons you've had along the way. And we're gonna go ahead and dive into the first. I'd like to hear about some things that are new with Only Crits, and then that'll lead us into the Kickstarter that we
Mhm.
are very excited to hear about. So what kind of stuff is new on the website? I've noticed quite a bit, but I don't want to.
Yeah, so I mean, to give a broad overview, we have added um, a wealth of new dice since the last time. I mean, I can't really just list them all because that we have fun names for all of them, but we've
Yeah.
added a ton of new dice in a variety of categories. I don't know if we had like stone dice last time we talked. We have
No,
like,
that's something I wanted to ask about because they look
mm,
really pretty.
yeah, they're very cool. I don't actually know if I've like gotten any of our stone dice, like held them.
Oh,
Um, but they are, yeah, I know, I know.
I feel like I actually have one of your stone dice
Oh
right
yeah?
here.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
jealous.
They've been on my I believe you had just come out with them and I think I had bought them either like very shortly after our initial interview and I think prior to it actually going out. But yeah, I'm pretty sure because I had never had stone dice and you were my first purchase of them. They're sweet, they're awesome. Go check them out. I love rolling them because they like have a nice clunk when you roll them.
Nice.
'Cause they're good weight. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm good to hear that they that they behave themselves.
So the stone dice are dope. I also saw that there's this like spectral skull, which the photographer did a great job of capturing that. Um, Showing like it looks like it's glowing, but in a kaleidoscope effect.
Oh, crazy. Yeah. There's actually a whole newest dice area on this website right now.
Yeah, and the Eldritch Edge metal dice collection. That one's just it's a sphere essentially for a D20, but it has the spikes to kind of make it stop because the spikes, I assume, slightly prop it up, which is super cool.
And don't drop it on the floor and lose it. But
Yeah.
damn, this thing is like does actually look super cool, super awesome. You've got some like Japanese Sakura Harmony style dice that look like
Those ones
something out of what do they it looks like something out of like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, maybe.
yeah.
That style of campaign. You have eyeball dice now.
Yep.
Like you used to only have ducky dice. Now you got
Yeah.
eyeball dice. You got like
Yeah.
the skull dice. You got cool new hollow dice.
Yeah,
with
the hollow
Drake.
ones. The hollow ones
Yeah.
look perfect for your upcoming steampunky arcane steampunk thing.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted, because we're doing this for you right now. We are
Yeah,
so
I
excited about
appreciate
your
it.
website.
Thank you.
Yeah. The
I'm
other
really
thing that
glad.
really blew me away from a business standpoint is your subscription sets. Like
Yes.
3 different tiers of subscription based on the kind of dice people want, whether it's metal, stone, or it looks like acrylic right now. Is that how that's broken down?
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You all, I mean, I definitely see myself grabbing a few more dice at some point. I mean,
yeah.
you have a transparent panda, bamboo panda dice, which I mean, again, like I love the wild stuff you guys like. Just I've never seen anything like it before. So this
Yeah.
is
Well,
very cool. Very cool.
I mean, all credit to Eric for that because
Mhm.
he's constantly hustling to keep the fun dice in the store. Um, and I mean, yeah, that was one of our big points of feedback when we kicked off was like a variety of dice to choose from just is more exciting. So you guys should get more dice. And Eric was like, great, heard. And he's just been absolutely working to make sure we have a plethora of wild products constantly coming through the store. So it's good
Well,
to
good
hear
job, Eric.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
hitting the right spot.
Yeah, so why a Kickstarter?
Tell us about the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
What is this
what
Kickstarter?
is it
Yeah,
and
oh,
why
my
are you
pleasure.
doing it?
Well, so again, it's kind of funny because I think the first time we mentioned it to anyone other than ourselves was I think we brought up very briefly at the end of the last interview when we talked to you guys was
Mhm.
that we were talking about doing a book that linked the places that our adventures were set in because we've been I've been writing adventures and we've been releasing adventures for 3 years now, and the initial principle was let's just link them all into a world. We'll just create a world book and we'll throw it out there and we'll have a place where all of the adventures were set. And that's where we started, and it gained a lot of momentum with with me, because world building is really fun. So I was building a world for a while. Got a little bit weird to include like all of the various places. I realized like some of the worlds that I had created were a little bit too not linkable. And the other thing we noticed was, well, if we were going to write this huge sort of world book, it'd be really, really fun to be able to create a physical product. We would love to be able to print the book. And B, we cannot print the book. We do not have the capital to print a bunch of books. And so the law sort of where we ended up on that was we still want to do it. We need to kickstart it. And from there, continued world building. We're going to kickstart it. We don't have a date. We don't really know what we're doing getting into the Kickstarter. But one thing that became clear was we need a strong theme. And the theme of we're linking adventures from a website that the audience, has probably never heard of, is actually not strong enough to make you fork over a bunch of dollars. So that was step 2, because step 1 was like, cool, we're doing a world book and we're going to kickstart it. And step 2 was, what is it actually about? we're world building, but everyone world builds. What is it actually about? And the other thing that I'm nerdy about, speaking of how everyone's a sweaty nerd about something, the other thing I'm nerdy about and have continued to grow nerdier about is Formula One racing.
You
So
mentioned
Oh,
that,
that's
yeah.
right.
We
yeah,
talked about that, and you're like, I'm kind of into this, and I feel like you
yeah,
might have been in the early stages. So you're
I
saying
was indeed,
you're in
and
the depths now.
I have spiraled into the depths of
You
of Formula
planted the
One.
thought. Wow, way back then. Dang.
Yep. It's kind of funny how it all twirled itself together. Because the theme of the book from that, I was world building one day and I was watching a race on my second monitor, and I was like, why can't we do this in D&D? Are there rules for racing in D&D? And there aren't. And so I was like, well, that's it then. We're doing a speed themed Dungeons and Dragons source book. And so that is what it is. It is called Gilman's Guide to Speed, spelled Guillman, because I am an asshole to myself. And we are doing a ton of speed based monsters, speed based subclasses, speed based classes, speed based spells. We're building mechanics for creating your own vehicles. We're making mechanics for races. Um, and that's the core of it. It's a speed-based source book. We've done a lot. I built a lot of stuff before we got to the speed theme, so there's a lot of just fun other stuff. If you're not into speed and racing, there's a ton of stuff that is not centered solely around speed and racing. I also did build out a whole world that this whole sort of speed-based stuff takes place in. That I'm very excited about. And yeah, I mean, I've been writing it since we last talked, which is 2 years. I've been writing it, so
Wow.
there's a ton in it and a ton that I'm excited about in it. And the Kickstarter is officially being launched on August 16th, 2023. So
Wow.
August 16th. So
yep,
by the time this releases, this episode, it'll be live more than likely. So
Yeah,
for
within a
all
few
you
days of that. So
yeah, so check the show notes, the description of this episode, or go to Only Crits and onlycrits.com, where I'm
yeah.
sure they will have a banner or some sort on the
we
website or
certainly
any of
will.
their
Yeah.
social media platforms.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
one thing I was looking at when I was reading over your little introduction to Gilman's Guide to Speed is the phrase arcane punk. I
Yeah.
love that phrase right now. I've not ever heard that. I don't know if that's common or not, or if you coined it, but it's
Great
kind of
to
like
hear that
it's
you
like
like it.
steampunk, but it's arcane punk, and I think that that's like a whole genre that as a player, I would be that got me excited about the idea because I like steampunk stuff, but there's no real crossover into D&D. And even the art you have on here, you've got like sort of a steampunky vibe, but it is still like arcane punk, right? It's like the arcane version of it with magic or fueled by that. So I can just see like the flying machines and the dirigibles and stuff like that people are going to create or want to use in order to be able to fly things or be able to race. And I'm looking at this from a I'm running Spelljammer right now, and I was a little disappointed with the Spelljammer not having really solid, good vehicle rules or
Mhm.
flight rules or flight combat. And so, will you have that kind of stuff in there so we could be able to do like fast flight races in like a Spelljammer type setting if I wanted to?
Yeah, it's already built. I mean, it's not finished. It's not fully edited, but exactly that stuff has already been built. Air battles, vehicle building. Yeah, and I'm really glad Arcane Punk resonated because that was exactly the feeling I was going for. It was just like steampunk has its pluses, but I have always been a little bit like steampunk's a little bit dirty and a little bit gritty, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fun. Dirty gritty stuff's fun. But where's that hyper polished, surreal, magical, facade that a Grand Prix shows on every race weekend. They slap a coat of varnish on everything in the city and it sparkles and shines, and people zoom around. And let's do that, but magic, which is where Arcane Punk came from. Yeah, so I'm glad that hit the right notes.
Totally.
There's you've said something earlier about not many rules in D&D about races, and I totally agree. And I was thinking the only thing I can think of in D&D was an Adventurers League adventure from back in the Tomb of Annihilation season. And Roy, are you familiar with the Adventurers League and how they structure their stuff?
A little bit. I've never like taken part, so
Okay, I'll
um,
give a little crash course. Basically, Adventurers League is for people who want to play D&D with strangers, but it is regulated in a way so people can't just walk in with a level 20 wizard. So there are these adventures to keep things fresh and exciting based on the most recent released hardcover, and they break it down by seasons. And when Tomb of Annihilation was coming out for 5e, I started to check it out, and it was the first adventure I ever played, actually, with the
oh,
Adventurers League, was a race in Cholt. Is it Cholt? I think it's the Tomb of Annihilation town, the really colorful island, tropical town. But anyway, point is, they would have these races where you would have a dino, because that was their whole thing. Cholt was
mhm,
like Jurassic Park, and they had their dinos that would lead these carts, and they had a couple basic mechanics to make it pretty easy, like what you could do with your main action, your bonus action, and your movement. But that was it. It was very you had to like track positions in the race with like kind of like a Connect Four board, and you just like moved people up the track based on the actions they took, and if they succeeded, and you moved people back based on their actions. It didn't give the same thrill as like watching someone go around this course, which would
mhm,
have been neat. But it worked to do the mechanics of the story that the story needed to do, which was like, there's the bad racers that you have to like
mhm,
compete your nemesis and all of
yeah.
that. So that's the only time I've seen it, and it is not well known. I mean, like, both of you were looking at me like I've never heard of this, and yeah, it didn't really take off, but it was pretty good given that it was the only thing. So I think you're really tapping into a need, an opportunity here for sure.
Can I ask? You have on here that there's going to be magic items, classes, curses, spells, and much more. But
Mhm.
could you give us a little hint or a little sneak behind of like, is there like what kind of class you might have been adding into this that we could potentially play in your arcane punk inspired world?
Definitely. Um, so one of the classes, which is a little bit less speed themed, but a little bit more, uh, a little bit, yeah. It's called the Siege Engineer. So that one is also because the Artificer is not as publicly available. So it's a little
Hmm.
bit artificer-y. And it's built around the idea of, it's called Siege Engineer. It has a subclass, which is a race engineer, which is
Hmm.
the guys in the pit lane who run out and do the tires. Um, Actually, that's not true. Those, it doesn't matter. That's, but yeah. So that idea of like modifying a vehicle is, and like making it efficient, and doing cool stuff to it, is the siege engineer. And
Hmm.
so they're going to be built around mechanics, creating fun things to ride in and shoot. And
And
then the other one um, that I can tease is called the Dynamo.
hmm.
And that is a more magical class, which is kind of flash-like, in the sense that it taps into drawing its power from moving. So the more you move and the more you have the ability to move, the more damage you can deal, the more charismatic you get.
So
Hmm.
sort of like the Juggernaut.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really like that. I keep thinking to myself, man, if I had had that class of siege engineer when I was playing my Descent into Avernus campaign, because that's a very Mad Maxy style campaign. I would love to, as a DM, have had places where people could stop off with their war machines, right, and be able
Mm,
to interact with some of these types of siege engineers or people who fix up, or maybe they give them the ability to soup up their siege thing, or have like an entire area in Avernus where there's like death races going on and stuff
yeah.
like that, or make a whole Mad Maxy campaign because I like Mad Max as a world. So I'm
Mm,
just looking at it as like, yes, I want to play in your world, but also like for those DMs that are running stuff and want to just incorporate cool stuff like this into the arcana of their own world. I love just pulling pieces or little things I like out of or rule sets that work and I
Mm.
know are have been tested or at least are functional, so I don't have to come up with it all.
Yeah.
Just make it easy for me, you know?
Yeah, and that it was exactly the idea. Everything has some flavor in it. Everything has a little lore if you want it, but nothing is tied so tightly to the book itself that it can't be extracted. Because I mean, that's what we all do. We pilfer and pillage and take for our own.
Mhm.
So do that with the book. That's the whole point. The classes should be taken out and used in other stuff. The races should be raced around every world that you can think of.
Yeah.
That was the exact premise. So
Well,
yeah,
just
I can't wait to see what you and everyone else does with the random bits and bobs in the book.
yeah, like if I wanted to incorporate racing into Spelljammer or just into a dungeon or to any of these campaigns that I'm excited about running, just having like, oh, there's a race component. You have all the sets and rules and classes and things to flesh it out and make it work really, really well. I think that's just such a cool idea and very. I think that's just a real solid niche, and it plugs a hole within the D&D community, which is, I think, like there's all these puzzle pieces out there that people have and they're building up, oh, I have this for this type of campaign and this for this type of campaign, but like I haven't seen anyone really target this puzzle piece, which is the race and speed aspect. That's super smart and super interesting, and you can definitely see I'll be probably one of your first Kickstarter backers, just to be curious to see what's on the other side of these
Thank you.
150 plus pages of content. So and art and all this other stuff. So I'm excited about that. And I like real books too. I like that it's an actual book because I won't
Yeah,
read a PDF. So that is very cool.
sure. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that. And for anyone who does read PDFs or just want, to be able to witness it without having to get the whole book, we will have like a tier for just the PDF, because the more people that can hop on, the more excited we get. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
know you can't announce all the bonuses and all the extra cool things, but Kickstarters are all about the levels, right? And how
Mhm.
cool they are. And I'm guessing there's going to be some that include dice, as you guys are a dice
There
community.
certainly are. We have
Um,
several sets of dice as the tiers go up.
yeah.
So
Are
yeah.
are there any other cool tiers that you can tease out for people to go check out, or maybe hint at something that might be worthwhile for people to go look at this Kickstarter page?
One of the things we're most excited about is because we're setting up mechanics to build vehicles, but we're also pre-making a bunch of vehicles. We're gonna do a little manual set. So we're gonna have a little illustration of the vehicle, partially deconstructed, some notes, some suggestions for upgrades. So we're quite excited about that. We've been working with some talented artists for that. Um,
Oh,
we're gonna do the whole. It's gonna be a box set. We're gonna get DM screens. We're doing spell cards, we're doing monster cards. Um, uh, there's a ton of stuff. Inspiration coins, I think.
shit, dude.
We're
That
doing the
that's
whole
awesome.
yeah, we're doing the whole nine yards. So if you like the physical stuff, we got plenty of physical stuff at various tiers. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other like big, really cool products that we've been stoked on that I'm just blanking on right now. Um, I
That's
mean,
okay. They have to. I
there's
think you've given enough for people to go look at the page because that's the
Yeah.
most
yeah,
important
if you
thing. Go
have
check it out and more. Right? Like
yeah,
there's
there's
all of
there's
this
tons.
and more.
Tons in the book,
That's
tons on
awesome.
the Kickstarter. If any of this is tickling a fancy, please go to the Kickstarter page and take a look for yourself.
Yep.
And
Link
I
in the
think
show notes.
there's something else this taps into, and that I can't leave this talk without saying. And Rory, did you ever play Twisted Metal?
I
Oh,
didn't. I've
yes.
seen plenty of Twisted Metal like videos,
Yep.
um,
The movie's
because
coming out.
I think
really,
it's a TV show. Is
There,
it a
there's a
TV show
movie.
or movie?
No, I think it's a movie. I
Okay.
am pretty sure, and I've seen a little bit online about it. There's like been a teaser trailer for it.
Mhm.
I timing could be real good for you if
yeah,
it's
no
coming
doubt.
out soon. So yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend doing. I mean, if you can get your hands on any of the video games, I think it was the PlayStation 2 one was really grim and dark. Chris would love it if you didn't play it, Chris. But the first was kind of cringy, not well balanced, and the second one was super good. But it was
Yeah, oh,
PlayStation
nice.
1. So you'd have to
Yeah.
get an emulator. So to anyone listening who played Twisted Metal, like this is I just have so many sirens going off in my head about how great this is going to be to like, you can put some machine guns, arcane machine guns on the side of your vehicle. Then you can upgrade those. Like that
Mhm.
is going to be sick.
Yep. That's exactly it.
I'm also picturing the idea of a demolition derby in like some backwater town somewhere, and then you just have all of these like I don't I like the kind of hillbilly flavor of that, and like but what does that look like in a fifth edition setting to have the adventurers stumble upon this weird community where people literally are crashing arcane vehicles into each other in an anticipation to see which one survives, you know, that would be so fun. And then they have to compete for somebody. So I'm just throwing out ideas because I think there's so many cool ways to incorporate this idea into any campaign and have it just be either a leg of a campaign or a whole campaign arc for people to explore and have fun with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I'm gonna have to write down Demolition Derby because that's not yet in the book. That's a perfect
Do
idea.
it.
Um, but uh,
Ooh, good idea.
yeah, that is the exact vibe we're going for is backwater races and grand interplanar races and speed being used every which way. And I'm really glad you guys have been understand it right off the bat because that's always a fear. You know, you
Mhm.
work on something and you never know if people are gonna be like, "I get it." So I'm really glad that's clicked, and I'm glad you're excited about it. Just
Yeah.
very very stoked.
Oh, I'm also she's fast enough for you, old man. You know, like we. I just I want to find that a way into my campaigns now too. All right, I think we're running short on time now. We have another interview coming up soon that we're gonna be needing to prep a little bit for. But I did want to say, like, last chance plug, where can people find you, buy dice, get notified about this Kickstarter, and be able to really support you guys in general, or digest some of this content we know you're coming out with.
Yeah, so onlycrits.com, that's the shop, that's the website. You can find pretty much everything from there. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, or you want dice, go to onlycrits.com. You can find us on socials if you like funny haha videos about D&D. TikTok, we're at onlycrits. Instagram, we're at onlycrits co, I believe. And Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, we are crits only. Um, and Yeah, and then the Kickstarter is launching August 16th, as we've said, and you should be able to find it at kickstarter.com/Gilman's Guide to Speed.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
so
think that's
much.
everything.
And if anybody wants to pick up any of your awesome dice and you want to support this podcast, I'll just mention that we have a promo code that we do get a little kickback from Only Crits. If you want to help us out and get some amazing dice, you can use the promo code NERD at the end when you check out. Somehow we got that because we were early adopters to it. And now if you put in NERD, you'll get yourself 10% off. So thanks a lot, and we appreciate that. And as always, everybody,
Keep it nerdy.
Keep it nerdy.
Talking nerdy. We're just talking nerdy. With all this talking nerdy. Oh, come on, you wanna talk nerdy?
And there you have it. Only Crits' Kickstarter is live right now on onlycrits.com, and we've linked it in the show notes. So go show it some love if you want your own copy of the 250 plus pages included in Gilman's Guide to Speed. Thanks again for listening, and as always, keep it nerdy!